Forget what Hollywood has shown you, the gleaming, nickel-plated revolvers twirling on a finger before a clean midday showdown. That's pure fantasy. The actual Wild West was a brutal, unforgiving environment where your choice of revolver wasn't about aesthetics, it was about survival. And the individuals who lived long enough to become legends didn't rely on attractive firearms. They depended on weapons that could end a conflict before it even began. Number 20. The Star Double Action, 1858. The Union's secret rapid-fire weapon. Before Colt dominated the revolver market, the Star Arms Company introduced a weapon that offered shooters something revolutionary: the ability to fire without manually cocking the hammer between shots. The Star Double Action 1858 emerged as a .44 caliber 6-shooter capable of emptying its cylinder faster than almost any other firearm on the battlefield. Union cavalry units were equipped with over 25,000 of these revolvers during the Civil War, and their rapid-fire capability astonished Confederate opponents, who were accustomed to slower, single-action designs. Instead of having to thumb back the hammer for each shot, a soldier could simply keep pulling the trigger, sending round after round downrange in quick succession. However, the Star's brilliance came with a drawback. Its long, heavy double-action trigger pull made accurate shooting difficult, especially under the intense pressure of combat. Many soldiers found themselves pulling shots wide, sacrificing precision for speed. The mechanism was also more intricate than Colt's simpler designs, leading to more frequent malfunctions in the field. After the war, surplus Star revolvers flooded westward into civilian hands. Cowboys and settlers who mastered that heavy trigger discovered they had a significant advantage in close-range encounters. Original examples can still be found today in the Smithsonian and various private collections, their mechanisms worn smooth from years of rigorous use. Number 19. The Colt Patterson, the revolver that started it all. Before the Peacemaker, before the Navy Colt, there was the Patterson. Samuel Colt's first commercially produced revolver completely transformed handgun design, even if almost no one at the time recognized its significance. Introduced in 1836, the Patterson was a 5-shot .36 caliber revolver featuring a folding trigger that only emerged when the hammer was cocked. It looked peculiar, and it felt even more so. But in the hands of the Texas Rangers combating Comanche warriors in the late 1830s and early 1840s, it proved devastating. Captain Jack Hayes and his Rangers became the first mounted force to successfully engage Comanche raiding parties on equal terms. Before the Patterson, a man on horseback had only one shot from a single-shot pistol before being overwhelmed. With 5 shots at his disposal, a ranger could remain in the fight. The Patterson's weaknesses were considerable. Reloading necessitated complete disassembly of the revolver. Its fragile mechanism broke easily, and Colt's company actually went bankrupt in 1842 before the revolver's true potential was fully grasped. Nevertheless, the lessons learned from the Patterson's flaws directly influenced every subsequent Colt revolver. Without this delicate, unwieldy, yet revolutionary firearm, the Wild West would have been armed very differently. Number 18. The Lefaucheux Pinfire Revolver, the European Invader. While American gunsmiths were perfecting percussion cap revolvers, European inventors had already progressed to something more advanced. The Lefaucheux Pinfire Revolver utilized self-contained cartridges with small pins protruding from each round, eliminating the messy process of separately loading powder, ball, and cap. French officers introduced these revolvers to American soil during the Civil War, and from there, they made their way into civilian hands. Cowboys and frontiersmen who acquired one discovered they could reload in seconds while their opponents were still fumbling with powder flasks and percussion caps. The pinfire's tactical advantage was undeniable. In a gunfight where every second counted, being able to eject spent cartridges and quickly insert fresh rounds could mean the difference between survival and defeat. However, those exposed pins sticking out of every cartridge presented a constant danger. A hard bump or accidental strike could detonate a round right in a man's pocket. Carrying pinfire ammunition was like walking around with miniature bombs on one's belt. Despite this risk, the Lefouche demonstrated that cartridge revolvers were the future. American manufacturers took note, and within a decade, the percussion cap revolver was on its way to obsolescence. Number 17. The Beaumont Adams Revolver, the British double-action destroyer. Imagine yourself in a saloon shootout where your opponent doesn't need to cock his hammer between shots. While you're thumbing back your single-action Colt for a second shot, he's already unleashing his third. The Beaumont Adams Revolver introduced true double-action capability to American gunfighters and permanently altered the rules of close-range combat. This British-designed .44 caliber revolver allowed shooters to simply pull the trigger repeatedly without manually cocking the hammer. This continuous fire capability seemed almost insurmountable to anyone facing it with a traditional single-action weapon. The psychological impact was devastating. Opponents, hearing that rapid barrage of gunfire, often panicked, believing they were facing multiple shooters. That moment of hesitation was all a Beaumont Adams user needed to end the engagement. Confederate officers particularly favored these revolvers during the Civil War, appreciating their advantage in cavalry melees, where speed transcended precision. After the war, gamblers and saloon gunfighters who prioritized rapid fire over long-range accuracy sought them out. The trade-off was that heavy double-action trigger pull. Accurate shooting demanded extensive practice, and in untrained hands, shots went astray. But for professionals who mastered it, the Beaumont Adams offered a genuine advantage. Number 16. The Whitney Navy Revolver, the poor man's Colt. When Eli Whitney Jr. decided to enter the revolver market in 1857, he encountered a challenge. Colt's patents covered most of the superior design features, so Whitney did what any astute manufacturer would. He waited for those patents to expire, then built something almost as good for half the price. The Whitney Navy was a .36 caliber six-shooter that closely resembled the Colt Navy in both form and function. It wasn't as refined. The fit and finish couldn't match Colt's craftsmanship, but it operated reliably and cost significantly less, making revolver firepower accessible to men who couldn't afford the premium brand. During the Civil War, the Union Army purchased over 11,000 Whitney Navy revolvers as a secondary sidearm option. After the war, these affordable revolvers spread across the frontier, carried by settlers, cowboys, and small-time outlaws who needed a functional gun more than a prestigious name. The Whitney Navy wasn't a legend. It wasn't carried by famous lawmen or notorious outlaws, but it armed thousands of ordinary men on the frontier, and that holds more significance than any mythology. If you're gaining insights from this in-depth exploration of frontier firepower, be sure to tap that subscribe button. We have many more forgotten weapons to uncover. Number 15. The Colt Pocket, 1849. The Concealed Killer. Not every gunfight occurred on a dusty main street at high noon. Many transpired in cramped saloons, hotel rooms, and back alleys, where a full-sized revolver was too cumbersome to draw quickly. The Colt Pocket 1849 provided frontiersmen with a concealable weapon that could still take a life. Chambered in .31 caliber with a 5-shot cylinder, the Pocket Colt was small enough to slip into a coat pocket or waistband without being noticeable. It wasn't powerful, nor was it accurate beyond close range, but it was there when needed, and that mattered more than ballistics. Gamblers favored this revolver for obvious reasons. A man seated at a card table with a full-sized army Colt on his hip was openly declaring his intentions. A man with a pocket Colt hidden under his vest could respond to trouble without revealing he was armed until the moment he fired. Over 300,000 pocket Colts were produced between 1849 and 1873, making it one of the most commercially successful revolvers of the percussion era. Wells Fargo agents, stagecoach drivers, and businessmen traversing perilous territories all trusted these compact revolvers as a last-ditch insurance. Original examples survive in nearly every major firearms collection, their small frames worn smooth from years of concealed carry. Number 14. The Colt Dragoon, the mounted trooper hand cannon. Before the Walker earned its reputation for size and raw power, Colt had already engineered a beast that became the gold standard for cavalry sidearms. The Colt Dragoon wasn't merely a large revolver. It was a colossal weapon, specifically designed for mounted troops who required devastating stopping power at close range. Weighing over 4 pounds and featuring a 7.5-inch barrel, the Dragoon fired a .44 caliber ball propelled by a hefty black powder charge. The muzzle blast could illuminate the night, and its impact could penetrate multiple attackers or fell a charging horse with a single, well-placed shot. Mounted Dragoons wielded these massive revolvers during the Mexican-American War, often leading charges against infantry formations. The mere sight of cavalry troops armed with these enormous sidearms caused enemy ranks to scatter before a shot was even fired. That psychological intimidation extended into civilian life. Settlers and frontiersmen confronting hostile groups or dangerous game found security in the Dragoon's fearsome stopping power, an attribute few other handguns could rival. The Dragoon's legendary durability meant it could endure brutal field conditions. Tales from the frontier describe Dragoons being swung as clubs after the last round was fired, then continuing to function flawlessly as firearms afterward. However, such immense power came at a price. The sheer bulk of the Dragoon made concealment impossible and rapid draws impractical. As the frontier advanced, gunfighters began seeking weapons that balanced power with speed. Number 13 is the Smith & Wesson Model 1. This marks the beginning of the cartridge revolution. In 1857, Smith & Wesson introduced a compact revolver that would eventually render every percussion cap firearm obsolete. The Model 1 was a tiny .22 caliber, 7-shot pocket pistol. But its innovation wasn't about power, it was about the rimfire cartridge. For the first time, American shooters could load a self-contained metallic cartridge that combined primer, powder, and bullet into a single unit. No more loose powder, no more fumbling with percussion caps. Simply load 7 rounds and you were ready for action. The Model 1's small caliber limited its effectiveness in serious gunfights, but Smith & Wesson held the roll-in white patent for bored-through cylinders until 1869, giving them a monopoly on cartridge revolvers in America for over a decade. This monopoly compelled Colt and other manufacturers to continue producing percussion revolvers long after the technology became outdated. When the patent finally expired, the floodgates opened, and cartridge revolvers rapidly displaced cap and ball designs across the frontier. The Model 1 itself was a gambler's weapon, a hideout piece for saloon workers and ladies of the evening, but its legacy was transformative. Every modern revolver owes its existence to the cartridge system pioneered by Wesson. Number 12 is the Colt Army, 1860. The Union's fighting machine. When the military required a revolver with more stopping power than the elegant Navy Colt could provide, Colt responded with a straightforward fighting machine designed to dominate any confrontation. The Army 1860 fired a potent .44 caliber round while retaining the balance and smooth handling for which Colt revolvers were renowned. Union cavalry units wielded these revolvers with brutal efficiency during the Civil War. After the war, those same battle-hardened weapons accompanied soldiers westward into the hands of cowboys, lawmen, and settlers facing daily life-or-death struggles. With an 8-inch barrel, the Army Colt delivered rifle-like accuracy, capable of hitting targets well beyond 100 yards. This made it a primary choice not only for combat, but also for hunting large game and defending homesteads from considerable distances. The Army Colt's lethality wasn't just in its ballistic performance, it was in its presence. That gaping .44 caliber muzzle commanded respect. Gunfighters and outlaws recognized its reputation for one-shot stops, and more than a few confrontations ended the moment someone aimed an Army Colt at their adversary. Durability was another defining characteristic. Its robust design handled the relentless abuse of frontier life with ease. Whether caked in dust, battered from rough riding, or exposed to harsh weather, it continued to function reliably. Number 11 is the Colt Navy, 1851. The gentleman's fighter. Imagine the perfect harmony of power and elegance. A revolver so flawlessly balanced, it felt like an extension of your own hand, yet potent enough to decisively end any confrontation. The Colt Navy 1851 wasn't merely a firearm. It was a masterpiece of design that also happened to be ruthlessly effective in combat. Chambered in .36 caliber, the Navy struck what many considered the ideal compromise between stopping power and controllability. It possessed enough force to incapacitate a man with a well-placed shot, while remaining manageable for rapid and accurate follow-up fire. Wild Bill Hickok famously carried a matched pair of Navy Colts in his iconic red sash, elevating the revolver to legendary status. His sharpshooting exhibitions became the stuff of frontier folklore, featuring feats of marksmanship that seemed impossible for handguns of that era. What truly distinguished the Navy Colt was its exceptional balance. Unlike bulkier revolvers that felt front-heavy or clumsy, the Navy pointed naturally and allowed for smooth, controlled shooting. This made it particularly lethal in rapid-fire exchanges, where split-second accuracy determined the outcome. Wealthy cowboys often transformed their Navy Colts into personalized works of art, adorning them with intricate engravings and ivory grips. These custom touches turned the revolvers into symbols of status and style. Yet beneath the fancy exterior was a proven combat weapon, battle-tested in countless frontier skirmishes. Number 10 is the Remington New Model Army, the solid-frame sledgehammer. When Colt's critical patents expired, Remington wasted no time in challenging the Revolver King. Their response wasn't just a copy, it was an improvement in every meaningful way. The Remington New Army quickly became the weapon of choice for shooters who prioritized unbreakable reliability over flash or finesse. The game-changing innovation was its solid frame construction. Unlike Colt revolvers, which relied on a wedge to secure a removable barrel assembly, the Remington encased its cylinder within a rigid steel frame. This dramatically increased structural strength, allowing it to safely handle heavier powder charges that would have shattered lesser designs. Chambered in .44 caliber, the Remington matched Colt's raw power. However, its reinforced build meant shooters could load hotter rounds, achieving muzzle velocities and stopping power that surpassed competing revolvers. Beyond raw power, the solid frame provided superior accuracy. The rigid construction reduced flex between components, ensuring tighter shot groupings even at longer ranges. This consistency made the Remington a favorite among professional gunfighters who demanded reliability they could stake their lives on. However, the solid frame was not without its drawbacks. The increased structural strength came at the cost of added weight, and while coats allowed for easy cylinder swaps in the field, the Remington's design made cylinder removal more complicated. Still, for shooters who needed a sidearm that could endure relentless punishment and keep firing, the Remington New Army stood unrivaled. Number 9 is the Colt Lightning, the double-action speed demon. Imagine a revolver capable of unleashing a hail of bullets as fast as you could pull the trigger, eliminating the need to cock the hammer between shots. The Colt Lightning introduced true double-action firing to American revolvers, providing gunfighters with a weapon that could overwhelm opponents with sheer, relentless firepower. The Lightning's mechanism allowed for continuous fire at a pace that seemed impossible to adversaries still fumbling with single-action designs. While they struggled to thumb back the hammer for a second shot, Lightning users were already sending their 4th or 5th round downrange. Chambered in .38 and .41 calibers, the Lightning balanced respectable stopping power with speed and controllability. It wasn't designed to knock a man backward like a .44, but in a close-range gunfight, being able to empty your cylinder in a few heartbeats was often far more valuable. Several well-known lawmen adopted the Lightning as their weapon of choice, appreciating its advantage in fights where facing multiple opponents was a real possibility. Gamblers recognized its potential in the cramped, volatile environments of saloons and gambling halls. However, the Lightning's heavy double-action trigger pull required extensive practice to control. In untrained hands, accuracy deteriorated rapidly during fast-paced exchanges. Additionally, the intricate internal mechanism demanded more frequent maintenance compared to simpler, single-action designs. Number 8 is the LeMat Revolver, the shotgun surprise. What do you get when a New Orleans doctor decides that 9 revolver shots just aren't enough? You get one of the most creative and devastating combination firearms ever designed. A revolver that concealed a brutal shotgun surprise, capable of clearing an entire room. Dr. Jean-Alexandre Lemas engineered this masterpiece by merging a 9-shot .42 caliber cylinder with a central 20-gauge shotgun barrel. Imagine facing an opponent, counting his shots, and assuming he's empty after 6. Meanwhile, he's still holding 3 more revolver rounds, plus a shotgun blast powerful enough to neutralize multiple enemies with a single trigger pull. Confederate cavalry officers transformed the LeMat into a battlefield legend during the Civil War. After the war, it found its way into civilian hands, particularly among lawmen and outlaws who valued its overwhelming firepower for handling unpredictable multi-opponent fights. Switching between the revolver cylinder and shotgun barrel was deceptively simple. Just flick a lever on the hammer to select your mode of destruction. The sheer presence of a LeMat often ended gunfights before they began. Its reputation was so intimidating that simply drawing one could send opponents scrambling for cover. But this hybrid's brilliance came with trade-offs. The intricate internal mechanism was prone to fouling in dusty environments, and its bulk made it a heavy, awkward choice for daily carry. Number 7 is the Merwin and Hulbert Revolver, the automatic ejector marvel. Picture a revolver so advanced that with a simple twist of the barrel, all spent cartridges would eject automatically, cutting reloading time to a fraction of what was possible with any other firearm of its era. For cowboys accustomed to picking out empty cases one by one, the Merwin and Hulbert must have felt like pure magic. Its unique reloading mechanism worked by twisting and pulling the barrel forward, which ejected only the fired cartridges while leaving unfired rounds securely in place. This selective ejection wasn't just a mechanical party trick, it was a tactical game changer. Shooters could top off their cylinders without wasting unspent ammunition. Chambered in .44-40 caliber, the Merwin and Hulbert delivered formidable stopping power. Even better, it shared ammunition with Winchester rifles, streamlining logistics and reducing the equipment needed for extended frontier journeys. The revolver's accuracy was exceptional, thanks to an ingeniously designed barrel attachment system. The precise integration of the barrel and frame eliminated the wobble common in many contemporary designs. Several celebrated lawmen preferred Merwin and Hulbert revolvers for their superior reloading speed and consistent precision. However, its complex mechanics demanded more frequent maintenance than simpler revolvers, and finding replacement parts was difficult outside major cities. The revolver's unique operation also required specific training. A novice could easily falter under duress without adequate practice. Number 6. The Smith & Wesson Model 3, the top break revolution. Imagine holding a revolver that could be fully reloaded in under 10 seconds while your adversaries were still fumbling with loading gates and ejector rods. The Smith & Wesson Model 3 not only introduced cartridge loading to the American frontier, but completely revolutionized what a combat revolver could be. Its innovative top break action was unlike anything most gunfighters had ever seen. With a simple press of a latch, the barrel hinged forward, simultaneously ejecting all 6 spent cartridges. Load 6 fresh rounds, snap it shut, and you are back in the fight. The .44 American cartridge, developed for this revolver, delivered significant stopping power, making it lethal in close quarters engagements. Precision machining ensured outstanding accuracy, while the automatic ejection system prevented stuck cases and extraction failures. The Model 3 secured contracts with the Russian military, propelling it onto the global stage. Many units eventually made their way back into American hands through trade and surplus sales. Cowboys and lawmen who acquired one realized they possessed a weapon years ahead of their opponents. However, the Model 3's intricate mechanism was more delicate than the robust simplicity of traditional revolvers. On the harsh frontier, replacement parts were scarce. A serious mechanical failure could leave a gunfighter defenseless at the most critical moment. Number 5. The Colt Walker, the hand cannon that ignited a revolution. Envision wielding a weapon so massive it necessitated a custom saddle holster, as no man could comfortably wear it on his hip. The Colt Walker was more than just a revolver. It was a handheld cannon that redefined the capabilities of a handgun. Weighing over 4 pounds and measuring nearly 16 inches in length, the Walker was born from a collaboration between Samuel Colt and Texas Ranger Captain Samuel Walker. The Rangers demanded a weapon capable of reliably incapacitating a mounted Comanche warrior at 50 yards. This behemoth fired a .44 caliber ball loaded with enough black powder to deliver muzzle energy comparable to modern Magnum cartridges. When a Ranger discharged this weapon, the target didn't simply collapse. They were violently thrown backward by the sheer force of the impact. The psychological effect was equally profound. Native American warriors often abandoned attacks the moment they witnessed Rangers unholstering these colossal revolvers. Yet, this immense power came with a dangerous flaw. The massive powder charges frequently overstressed the cylinder, sometimes leading to catastrophic failure, leaving some Rangers with fragments of shattered metal instead of a functional weapon. The design was powerful, but fragile, a combination that could prove fatal to its owner. Only about 1,100 Walkers were ever produced, making surviving examples exceedingly rare and valuable today. Number 4. The Smith & Wesson Schofield, the cavalry's choice. Imagine a revolver so advanced that the United States cavalry chose it over the iconic Colt Peacemaker, a sidearm so quick to reload it could alter the tide of a battle in mere seconds. The Schofield wasn't just another contender in the revolver arms race. It was a technological marvel that many experts deemed superior to any Colt ever manufactured. Its pioneering top-break action was groundbreaking for American military tactics. While Colt users laboriously ejected each spent casing individually, Schofield shooters could flip open their revolver, eject all 6 empty cases simultaneously, and reload in under 10 seconds. The revolver was chambered for the .45 Schofield cartridge, specifically designed for its unique mechanism. It delivered formidable stopping power while ensuring smooth, reliable extraction with every shot. Major George Schofield championed this revolver during the Indian Wars, and many cavalry officers purchased them at their own expense, convinced the advantages far outweighed the higher cost. Outlaws also took note. Jesse James and his gang were known to favor Schofields during bank robberies, where rapid reloading allowed them to maintain continuous fire in prolonged gunfights. However, the Schofield's .45 cartridge was shorter than the .45 Colt, creating logistical issues in the field. Although Schofield rounds could be fired in a Colt, the reverse was not true. This ammunition incompatibility ultimately limited the revolver's widespread adoption. Number 3. The Colt Buntline Special, the Legend Maker. Imagine a revolver with a barrel so long it blurred the line between handgun and carbine, yet could still be drawn and fired with deadly accuracy at distances where other revolvers were little more than speculative noisemakers. The Colt Buntline Special was more than just a firearm. It was a legend, one that grew grander with each retelling. Its massive 12-inch barrel transformed the .45 Colt cartridge into a long-range powerhouse, offering accuracy and muzzle velocity that far surpassed typical sidearms. While standard revolvers generally lobbed bullets in the direction of distant targets, the Buntline delivered rifle-like precision. Stories of Wyatt Earp allegedly wielding a buntline during his time in Dodge City and Tombstone elevated the revolver to mythical status. Whether these tales were historically accurate or not, the image of Earp calmly dispatching opponents with pinpoint shots from his elongated Colt captivated the frontier's collective imagination. From a technical perspective, the extended barrel offered genuine ballistic advantages. The additional length allowed for a more complete powder burn, extracting every bit of velocity from each cartridge. This resulted in a flatter trajectory and greater impact force at extended ranges. Carrying such a weapon sent a clear message. Drawing a revolver with a 12-inch barrel was a declaration of confidence and capability. Anyone willing to carry such a formidable weapon effectively told the world they could end a fight before it began. However, this impressive size came with obvious disadvantages. The long barrel made the revolver slow and unwieldy to draw, prone to snagging on clothing or holsters. In confined spaces or quick-draw scenarios, the Buntline was simply impractical. Number 2. The Colt Single-Action Army, the Peacemaker. When most people envision a Wild West revolver, one firearm stands head and shoulders above all others. The Colt Single-Action Army, universally known as the Peacemaker, was not merely another sidearm. It was the quintessential weapon of the American frontier, carried by more legendary figures than any other revolver of its era. First introduced in 1873, the Peacemaker perfectly blended power, precision, and reliability into a single iconic package. Chambered in the formidable .45 Colt cartridge, it delivered devastating stopping power that could conclude a gunfight with a single, well-placed shot. Its smooth, single-action mechanism allowed for precise, deliberate shooting, providing total control over every round fired. This was the revolver trusted by legends such as Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday, and Bat Masterson. One of the Peacemaker's greatest strengths was its balance. Unlike earlier revolvers that felt front-heavy or awkward, the single-action army pointed naturally, as if it were an extension of the shooter's own hand. Beyond mechanical excellence, the Peacemaker carried undeniable psychological weight. Its instantly recognizable silhouette was known across the entire frontier. Drawing one sent an unmistakable message about the wielder's skill and intent. Many confrontations ended without a shot fired. Simply the sight of that iconic revolver made adversaries reconsider their choices. Customization options were endless, from barrel lengths to special grips, making every Peacemaker a reflection of its owner's personality. Most importantly, its simple yet rugged design functioned flawlessly under the harshest conditions. Whether caked in dust or battered in combat, it simply refused to fail. Number 1. The Matched Pair. 12 Shots of Death. The deadliest revolver of the Wild West wasn't a single make or model. It was the concept of the matched pair. The most lethal gunfighters did not entrust their lives to just one revolver. They carried two identical weapons, doubling their firepower and eliminating the deadly vulnerability of mid-fight reloads. Picture Wild Bill Hickok with his iconic pair of ivory-handled Navy Colts, or John Wesley Hardin with twin Peacemakers strapped in distinctive reverse-draw holster rigs. These were not merely weapons, they were fully integrated fighting systems, transforming their owners into nearly unstoppable forces in a gunfight. The tactical advantage was undeniable. 12 shots instead of 6 allowed a gunfighter to handle multiple opponents or survive prolonged engagements without being forced into a vulnerable reload. While single-gun shooters had to meticulously count their shots and plan reloads under fire, dual wielders could fight continuously until every threat was neutralized. And the psychological impact was devastating. Watching an adversary draw two revolvers simultaneously sent a crystal-clear message. This was a professional killer. Facing an adversary who had poured significant time, money, and effort into honing their skill could unnerve even the most experienced gunfighters. Hickok's paired Navy Colts, for instance, achieved legendary status. His remarkable capacity to simultaneously draw and accurately fire both revolvers was regarded by his contemporaries as almost superhuman. Hardin, on the other hand, employed an inventive reverse-draw holster system, enabling him to achieve incredibly swift draws from virtually any stance. This innovation was a primary factor in his reputation as one of the most formidable gunfighters of his time. However, proficient dual wielding involved more than just strapping on an additional revolver. It demanded years of focused training. Genuine mastery necessitated ambidextrous precision, effective reloading methods for both hands, and the capacity to coordinate firing under extreme duress. Only the most disciplined and adept gunfighters could leverage a matched pair to its full, lethal capacity. The matched set epitomized the pinnacle of frontier combat, a deadly fusion of gear and expertise, where survival depended not merely on possessing quality firearms, but on wielding superior weapons with unparalleled skill. From the pioneering Star to the iconic Peacemaker and the terrifying spectacle of synchronized revolvers clearing leather, these 24 weapons not only equipped the frontier, but actively sculpted it. Each design embodied a distinct approach to survival, whether through sheer stopping power, rapid reloading, mechanical ingenuity, or ruthless tactical effectiveness. These were not mere instruments. They represented the fine line distinguishing a legendary figure from an unmarked grave in a forgotten frontier burial ground. In the relentless environment of the American frontier, your choice of revolver wasn't just significant, it was paramount. So, which of these formidable revolvers caught you most off guard? Were you aware that frontier gunfighters had access to such sophisticated firearms? Share your insights in the comments. We value hearing from fellow history enthusiasts who appreciate these frontier gems. And if you enjoyed this in-depth exploration of Wild West firepower, consider subscribing for more journeys into the weapons and warriors that defined America's most perilous era. Until our next encounter, keep exploring.